So last week we talked about Fight Club. For those of you who weren't here, we talked about a little bit about the movie, but really about the lessons from Fight Club. I shared this on the website today. For those that you that have registered for the Huddle or for the WhatsApp community, and I have your email address. You've received this email, so hopefully you've seen it or will see it, and have a chance to read through it and give me some feedback if you care to. But anyway, we talked about shared vision. We talked about how in the movie, that Tyler Durden got them to do some really intense stuff, not the least of which was the fighting. It was all, the Project Mayhem stuff and putting themselves through a lot of grueling trials and tribulations based on the vision of fellowship, the vision of changing society. That's what got them to do all of that. And there was, in the midst of all of that, that was fighting is a metaphor for conflict, real conflict that we encounter as peers, as coworkers, as family members, as neighbors, all that real conflict there. And when we embrace those things and we navigate those things and we're not afraid to navigate them and to address those things head on, that's when we allow, our relationships get deeper. And when our relationships get deeper, we get extreme dedication. So those were the three, key points that we covered last time. And when I went back and watched the video and listened to the the testimonies and everything, it made me think about what Rob said a couple of weeks ago about holding space. Is that we tend to think, people say they hold space, but they don't really hold space. Something to that effect. He said it much more charismatically than I did, but that was the point. And I've been thinking about that a lot recently. And I thought about it as I was watching the video and listening to the conversation. It's like I didn't really hold space. I wasn't holding space last week, and so I'm in this process of trying to be a lot more intentional. Um, because I realize it is a nuanced thing and it requires a lot of effort. Even in a space like this where we're trying to, make sure everyone gets an opportunity to share, there's still a mandate to do it well. And so I just wanted to talk for a second, like, what does it mean for you? And Rob, I'm looking to you because you brought it up. But anybody, like, Kenneth, I know you do this a lot. You hold space for a lot of people, and you're very practiced at it. Not others, Troy is a pastor, right? We just talked about all the things that he does to hold space for others, and others may have experience as well. Ted, I know you go from place to place, pouring into different ministries and different groups. What does it mean to hold space? What does it actually mean? When you say I'm holding space for someone or I'm asking someone to hold space for me, what does that mean? Does anybody want to share?
Yeah, I'll go. I think it means to listen without judgment, let them unpack it, and maybe provide guidance and just allowing them to feel their feels. Um, so going through a divorce, and I got three daughters, and my oldest is 8, so she can hold on to rage for a little bit. And I gotta hold space. I have to normalize what she's feeling. I
Mm,
gotta validate how she's feeling it and that she's a human, she's perfect and still human for feeling it. Normalize, validate, and then encourage and let her know she's resilient enough to make it through, and it'll make sense when it's supposed to make sense.
mm, yeah. Listening without judgment, validating, really good themes. Anybody else? Well, this is a good topic. So, this is a good topic. Ted, you came on camera, and Eric, you unmuted.
I mean, I'll just say, it's really giving people the opportunity to listen, and sometimes that's um, I mean, giving people the opportunity to speak, but in a way that um, lets them know that what they say is valued, and that they're no matter what they say, we're going to listen. Um, a number of meetings I facilitate, there's some people who just remain silent for the longest time, and sometimes it's just drawing them out and saying, hey, we appreciate you. If you want to contribute, please do.
Hmm. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen you do that. Um, yeah, there is that there, and that's an interesting dimension what you're bringing out there, which is in contrast to Andres, who's talking about interacting with his children, and he talked about his oldest daughter having rage, and presumably that rage is being manifested towards him, all right, or towards some situation that he's involved with. And how does he navigate that in something that's, very close and personal? Your situation, what you're talking about is a little different in as much you're talking about kind of these public settings with, professional environment and people maybe not knowing how to contribute, but you wanting to set the tone for them that it is okay to contribute. And that's an important way to hold space as well, to say that your input matters, right? You may not have a title or a big project or whatever, but your input matters. And both of those things are good examples of holding space. So good. Eric, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I feel like I'm still learning what this like what holding space means. I feel like um
Mm,
probably like prior to this conversation in different situations I made a lot of assumptions about what it was, and I feel like it's different for everybody, and just having more like awareness about my relationships can help me understand like certain things. Like I have a lot of like women in my family that I can say like I guess I hold space for like my mom, sister, like cousins, etc. But sometimes I make the assumption like, oh, I have to fix this thing or I have to do something, and for each different person in the relationship, holding space looks different for them. Like one person, you know, they might just want to like, vent. Another person, they might actually need me to do something. Or, like I have a younger sister, we're 11 years apart. She doesn't want to share a bunch of things with me, but like if I just take her somewhere, like, all right, let's just go to the mall or let's go do this, like that's an opportunity for her to like process what she's going through. And I feel like I'm still learning myself because sometimes I apply my selfishness to it. Like someone might come to me and it's like I might not want to hear you complain right now. Like I might feel like you complaining like like yo, we could go fix this in like 2 minutes. But it's not always fair to like approach it in that way. So I'm learning to like take myself out of it and just try to just be more aware of what's happening, and also be aware but not try to be predictive, because sometimes I am like that. Like I might assume, oh, well, this is what you need or whatever. And just trying to, just be more present. Maybe that's the best way I could put it.
Nah, you said a lot there. You said a lot. Number one, I honor you for saying I'm still figuring it out, right? Like, because as Rob said, and you, Rob, you got to remind us how you phrased it. But Rob said something to the effect that people hold space, and they may think they're actually holding space, but they aren't. And so I appreciate you coming in like, I don't know, I'm still figuring it out. And I'm telling you, when I watched the video, and there was nothing dramatic, you know what I mean? It was just little things that I realized I wasn't holding space for people as they talked. And I was just like, wow, I hadn't seen that. And it was important for me to see that. So I'm 48, right? I'm still learning it. And now, and Rob just brought it home for me when he said it a couple of weeks ago. Like we all laughed at it. We thought it was a funny comment, but I really was noodling on like, do I know how to hold space? Like, so I wanted to, bring it forward. And even with Troy, right? I talked about earlier when we were ministering to him a moment ago. Every time this conversation comes up, I just say, Troy, take some time. And then I had to sit with that for a minute, like, wait, is it that easy? Can he just take some time? And really wanting to unpack that a little bit more and not just give him some generic, oh, take some PTO. And like, no, well, I understand the pressures that he's feeling, what's going on there. Let me go a little surface deeper, deeper, deeper. And what you just talked about is even the desire to come up with a solution is problematic, right? Even the desire to fix it and not just be like, come out, pour out, brother. Just, say what's on your heart. Because I'm already thinking about, well, how can we get time off? How can we do this? How can we do that? Right. And so there's a lot of dimensions that I think we always got to be mindful and sensitive to that. Rob, you want to add? Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Eric just said. Like for me now, holding space people is, for me, is just surrendering to a space that I was invited to, but it is mine. So taking my understanding of what this is going to be, what they're going to say, what they need, and I allow people to have even requests, like what they need. Like sometimes people need money, sometimes people need to cry, sometimes people need to. I
Yeah.
just surrender to anything of my understanding of what I thought this was going to be, or how to process it, and just allow them to kind of like lead and make requests in that space. So it's definitely hearing them out, but also kind of like taking notes, being a fly on the wall, and also just like being like accountability partner. I think that that's big for me when it comes to people asking me to hold space, because one day ain't enough. Like we don't just go through something for one day.
Oh, true. Wow. Wow. Yes. Yes, that's another dimension.
Mm.
I'm guilty of this. I'll say it right now. I feel like one conversation gets the job done. Right? Like we gotta go. All right, brother, go out there and do something, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, time. Be the follow-up. The
Yeah.
holding space requires follow-up. It can, yeah, endurance. Good. Whew. All right. Kenneth, go ahead, bro.
Here I am. Hold on. Okay. All right. There we go. There we go. I was liking what Robert was saying too, just about really listening to people, because I think that that's one of the things is that first of all, I believe somebody said that everybody may have a different definition of holding space. It's almost like when somebody talks about the definition of a man or what makes a man whole. Every man is different. So I think the first step in understanding somebody holding space is understanding what type of space they holding. Because if we even coming into a space, I could get frustrated if I don't know what type of space this is that I'm interested in, but that I'm in. But then also we have to do our due diligence of putting some type of clear expectations of what our spaces that we're holding looks like, or what we expect in those objectives. Because for me, holding space is the space is open for you. It's not a space for me. I'm holding space for you to support you. And I'm not giving you the answers, and I don't have the answers for you, but I'm holding space for you to support you along your journey, because it's not mine. Now, if I'm having space, then I'm having my space to do what I want to do and to tell you what I think is best. But if I'm holding space,
Yeah.
then that means that I have a space for you to come so that I can meet you where you are and we can share experiences. And like Robert was saying, we're doing it together. And I think that in all relationships, when we say that we're there for somebody, are we truly holding space for them to help them grow? Or are we truly trying to get our point across? And if you notice, even too, David, a lot of times when I'm in my space, I say even at the end, look here, if anybody need to stay on, it ain't no time limit on holding space. I know that there has to be some boundaries there, but one of the things for me, if I'm holding space and somebody needs something, I have to leave that space open for them.
Mm.
Because once I shut something down, then that person that thought that they had a space for them, then it's shut down.
Mm.
And so that's just kind of how I look at it. And like I say, Robert hit on a couple of things there that, like you say, it's a journey of consistency with someone if you're truly holding space for them.
Mm.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. You made a distinction between holding space and having space. And I suppose the distinction between those two things, or at least what I was hearing, is one like for instance, when I say this is the huddle and this is what we're going to be doing in this space, and so this is, this is how it's defined, versus if you were to call me and say, "Hey, brother, can we talk?" That's the difference between having space and holding space, right? Is that what
Well,
I think?
I think it's the approach of when is that, like I say, having space seems to be more of a individual objective. So you have more of an objective of, okay, I'm going to try to get in here and I'm going to try to help everybody that I can. I have a space for people to come through. But
Mhm.
if I'm holding space, I have a free, open-minded space of, you know what,
I see.
I don't have the answers, but as a collective in this space, we might have some answers for you, and I'm willing to support you to help you find those answers. But you know what? I'm not going to give you the answers because I don't truly know your journey.
Mm.
And some of this stuff is too, I mean, I've been in different trainings and understanding how to better support my peers. And like I say, I use that big word support a lot versus help, because I just tend to think that if I say I'm going to help somebody, that means that I might know the answer for them. But if I'm supporting them, I'm assisting them to find what's best for them.
Mm. Mm. There's a lot of nuances there. A lot of nuances. Rob, it looked like you wanted to jump back in.
No, I was responding to a message. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Oh man, there's some nuances there. I'm gonna meditate on this, man. I'm telling you, I'm gonna be watching this replay a lot and just really soaking it in, because there's some nuances that you guys are communicating that are I think are tremendously important. I mean, so real quick, I'll just show you my slide, which was not anywhere as deep as you guys have gotten, which is, credit to you, but just some of the things that came to my mind as I was putting this together. So obviously empathy. Obviously, we have to get into a space where we're really, and I think you talked about this a little bit, Eric. Get into a space where we're really saying, well, where are they at? Not what I want to see, observe, what I'm observing or what I want to get off, but where are they at? And meeting them where they are, listening to understand, not to respond. Something I do a lot. I think men tend to do this a lot. The first kind of lessons I had with holding space as a husband, and they always talk about women just want to vent, and men like to provide solutions, and that's one of those distinctions that we make. Men always, well, why didn't you do that, right? Eric, you just talked about it. Right? I got a solution. We can go take care of this right now, but we don't want the solution, right? Sometimes we just want to vent. Sometimes we want to just get things off. And so listening to understand and not respond, and then getting permission to give feedback or anything. Rob, I think I forget what phrase you used a moment ago, but you were talking about, do you want to, you want to just get something off your chest? Do you want to have a talk about solutions? Do you want to do something? And you said you let them make the request or just kind of define what that looks like. And so that's that concept there. But you guys have touched on a couple of other nuances that I think are so important. And I'm really gonna meditate on this video, because doing this right, I believe, and I'm sure each one of us can come up with a testimony. Doing it right versus doing it, nah, there's a difference. There's a difference in how the other person is feeling, right? We are physically there. We are physically holding the space, whether it's for an hour conversation or a series of conversations. But if it's done with a heavy hand, Rob, you were talking about, I had a rough day at work, and the other person like, me too. Let me tell you how about my day, right? Like when it's done in that situation, you like, well, did you really help, right? Like now I got to talk about what's going on, So anyway, you guys get the idea that these details do matter in the relationships that we have, particularly when we're trying to go deeper and more expansive in our relationships, whether it's platonic, brotherly relationships or romantic relationships. These nuances of how we hold space matter. They matter, they matter, they matter, particularly if we want to be in spaces and fellowships where we're inviting more depth, right? Where we are trying to intentionally cultivate more depth, which is, what most of us are doing here, right? Most of us have met within the last couple of months and we're like, all right, well, this is something. I want to see what it can be. And holding space properly is something that becomes really meaningful. And I acknowledge again, just going through the video and just thinking intentionally again, give Troy as an example. I haven't done this well, and so I apologize. I apologize. It's something that I'm going to continue to work on, and I welcome feedback. When I make a misstep, and I hope you are open to the same. If any of you make a misstep, right? That we really, 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 really be the iron sharpens iron type brothers. And what's the opposite of iron sharpening iron? Pillows fluffing pillows. I don't know what the opposite is, but when it's time for some, a softer touch,
Cotton,
huh?
cotton sharpening iron, or cotton
I
sharpening
don't think
cotton.
that's how that works, but y'all get the idea that sometimes we don't need to be sharpened. We need to be supported and nurtured and loved. So that's the key. Any other thoughts on that? On what that looks like, how we practice it, how we adapt. Someone mentioned, I think a couple of you actually mentioned being sensitive to the needs in different situations. So there's no one size fits all. Here's my formula for holding space, that you enter into it with a certain level of flexibility. Like, I'm going to see what they need or what the situation requires and adapt accordingly. James, go ahead.
Yeah, good point. I was just gonna add, like, how do you, as far as holding space, how do you tell the other person that you really can't hold space right at
Mm,
the moment
that's
without
another
being too
dimension.
direct? Yeah.
That's another dimension. I think a couple of people hinted at that as well. Someone, so I want other people to respond. I have a thought, but I wanted other people. So I see two hands raised. Andres and Rob, do either of you have a response to that question?
Um, yeah, I usually just say I'm not in the space for this conversation right now. Can you give me a couple minutes, or like whatever I might need? Is this an emergency? So, um, just being honest, like, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, but you can talk to me about it. But like,
Mm.
and as soon as you can. And some of the sometimes I put boundaries on it, like, hey, what do you want, support or do you want like comfort? And then I'm just gonna be quiet if it's comfort. But if there's some support to this, then I'll be able to pour in. My question was like,
Wait, before
what
you get to your question, I want to make sure that we answer his question. Rob, do you have an answer to his question, or do you have another share?
Um, I hate to say it like this, but your no gotta just be as strong as your yes, and I think you gotta stand firm in that. Um, I get that all the time. Me and my closest friend, we had to go through some stuff, but we separated for 8 years, and when we came back, we literally made that a rule. Like, if I ain't got it, I ain't got it. So it'd be like, look, I need you right now, and she'd be like, Rob, I ain't got it. I'd be like, cool, like, because I think kind of like what
it's so
Andrea
much
said,
more
like,
problems.
yeah, like just being completely honest, and it's not really disrespectful. I mean, there for me, there's no shame in being selfless. So I have to be honest with myself, with because I wouldn't want to hold space for somebody and be half-assed with it when they really need it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm doing more harm than good anyways.
Yeah.
So my no has to be just as good as yes, and knowing how to communicate that. You know what I'm saying?
That's
Just
the
being like,
part.
I ain't got it. I'm sorry. You know?
That's the part. I like the idea that you and your friend have made a covenant about it. To
Yeah.
recognize that, this is our safe word. I ain't got it. Like, I'm not gonna BS you. I ain't got it. Give me 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it is. I like that, but I think, James, that was what I was thinking as well. Fundamentally, you have to be honest. You got to be truthful. Just say, look, I'm running, I'm raw, I'm on empty, whatever it is, And obviously, you want to have that be as tactful and loving and compassionate as you possibly can. But like the Bible says, let your yes be your yes and your no be your no, right? So at some level, you just have to say, this is what it is, and hope that they, can hold on to a time when you do got it and are available to be supportive. But it's in the delivery, and that delivery is worth practicing. This book, Crucial Conversations, I recommend this all the time. It's one of my favorite books. Um, it talks about how when we have to get into these really intense conversations, our natural response is to just deal with it now, right? Someone comes to you and says, hey, can we talk? You like, okay, what about what? And we just we decide we're going to steamroll into the conversation. Well, this book is talking like, hey, you probably shouldn't do that. You probably should take a step back and say, hey, you know what? Well, what are we talking about? Let me prepare. Let me call you back. Let's schedule a time, right? Because some of these things you need to be prepared for, right? And because the topic is challenging, right? Whatever it is they want to discuss, and because you want to get in the right headspace, right? You don't want to come from just long day at work, got argument with a coworker, whatever, and go directly into trying to hold space for someone else. You're just like, you know what? I'm more than happy to have that conversation, more than happy to be there for you, more than happy to resolve this conflict or whatever it is. However, is it okay if we schedule a time, next week, Monday or something like that to do that, right? And there's some ways that you can practice to have that tact. Does that help, James? Get the book too. The book is really good. Crucial Conversations. Was that Kenneth? That book gave me 20 years ago. Yeah, man, it's
Yeah,
solid.
it does help. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool, cool, cool. All right, Andres, you wanted to share about something. Go ahead.
Uh, what age do you think is like holding space a thing? I feel like I know I learned it late in my 30s, but like I don't know.
Hmm.
Like, was I supposed to have it in like high school? And I
That's a
know like
very good question.
super doubtful middle school was ever going to be me listening to anybody about anything. But
Well,
like, when does that become a thing to like hold space?
good question. Good question. Eric, yeah, I think you're a young boy here. Eric's 27, 28. So you're the young boy. And you heard him say he's still figuring out. I guess we're all figuring it out to some degree, but um yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think the challenge is not when we should know it or when we do know it, is when we should know it. And the reality is that anytime you have a friend, you should know it, right? Anytime you have someone who's in your life who's dependent upon you and wants to have that kind of deep fellowship to be able to talk about what's going on in their life, we should know it. The question is, do we have parents who are trained in how to hold space? Do they know how to hold space for us, right? Do our siblings, do we practice that with our siblings in the home, or are we, always going at it, right? Do we have the structures in place? So if we don't have it as teenagers or as in grade school or whatever, like, all right, it is what it is. But yeah, we have relationships, and those relationships are subject to the same emotional sensitivity as teenagers or younger as they are now, right? There's maybe more riding on it because there's money involved or sex involved or whatever, but there's still relationships that are built on human dynamics. And whenever that's in place, those human dynamics require sensitivity, compassion, empathy, and the whole nine yards. So I think what you're doing with your daughters will allow them to learn it earlier, right? What others, what Kenneth is doing with his son with meditation and mindfulness and all that type of stuff will allow his son to have it earlier. What I'm doing with my son, it would allow him to have it earlier. Lonzo, I'm sure, is doing this with his children, right? We should be setting up our next generation to have it a little sooner, but certainly by the time we're in our 20s, we should be holding ourselves accountable to know it and to practice it, I would think. Does that answer your question, Andres? How do you feel about that answer, I should say?
Oh yeah, it makes sense. It's when you said, "Do our parents have it?" I was scream, "Nope." So
Right?
probably why I didn't get it right. And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, so just it's Yeah, now I think about it, I've like recently had to explain it to my mom. Like, this is a concept called like hold space. You're gonna have to be quiet now. It's gonna be hard for you. So
That's real. That's
that
real.
was a fun job there.
That is real. That is real. Good share. Rob, you wanted to jump back in?
No, I mean, I was gonna comment when he asked the question. I'm like, we've been having opinions on things or things that we want before we even had language. So, I mean, it started when we were born, in the womb, actually. So, so yeah, we should have been had it. I think that's the unfortunate part.
Yeah.
I can I ask a question though?
Please.
It's funny. A lot of my friends back at home that I communicate with, some of the extra masculine dudes, I'll use that term. Uh, they be like, just Rob, don't coach me. Just kick it to me real. Like you ain't got a whole space. Just tell me what it is. Like, or I'll be like, what do you want me to? Like, you want Rob or you want Coach Rob? They like, just tell it to me. And I feel like everybody don't know how to even have the holding space or whatever. But it's like sometimes I think that the I don't want to say the issue because it's not an issue, but the difficulties that I run into is that a lot of extra masculine friends that I have, um, even when I give them my opinion, they don't want to hear it. So I'd be like, I should have just never held space for them or whatever. Like, do anybody run into like it's hard to hold space for nigga people? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes like,
You gonna say
or is it
Negroes?
you know what I'm saying? Or is it just me? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Negroes out
nah,
here.
I feel you. Yep. It's like we can't get to dessert what if you don't get the whole meal. How you just gonna how I'm gonna
Uh,
give it to you straight? Like
oh my
there's
goodness.
no there's no there's no shortcut to this answer.
Yeah, 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 brother. People. We'll do generalize, but I
For
understand what
sure.
you're saying.
My apology.
People want the direct if you're saying something that they want to hear. If you're not saying something they don't want to hear, if you're saying something they don't want to hear, then they don't want it direct. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a challenge. That's a challenge, and I'm not. In order, so this was another thing that I was thinking about coming into this conversation. Can you hold space for someone that doesn't want space held for them? And in order for someone to hold space, there's got to be some candor, some sincerity, some genuineness going on. And so if you give someone objective, sound, direct feedback and they reject it, is that holding space?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I feel like the dimension that we're talking about for holding space is specifically preserved for someone who wants that level of honesty and candor and support and empathy, encouragement, so on and so forth. Right? Not all the time, right? No one wants to be beat over the head all the time with constructive feedback or whatever it is. But if someone is just rejecting it all the time, I don't know that you can hold space for them. Not saying that you can't have a relationship or a friendship, but I don't know that you can hold space for them. That's just, at least just something that I was noodling on, coming into the conversation. And holding space feels like a two-way commitment. A two-way commitment to a fellowship that's based upon something. And if one person's not committing to that something, I don't know. I'm not sure. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that was the thought that came to mind. Eric, what were you thinking?
I mean, you just touched on it, David. I feel like sometimes it's just like some some people don't know what they want. Sometimes I feel like I've been in situations where like someone may want me to hold space but they just might not be like emotionally there or something I'll say for myself like we're talking about being like, being real with somebody like I've had situations like I'll say like where sometimes like I'll have a friend or somebody come to me like, "Yo, this is the situation. What do you think?" Or be real with me. And it's like I'm real with them, and then over time, I'll say I had over time some of them I'm my friends I've been so real with them that the truth kind of hurts. So now it's like I've had relationships where some of my like closest people, they're like withholding information from me because they feel like, yo, you told me something and it hurt me. And then now, like, for a while I kind of felt away because I'm like, dang, like now you don't even want to come tell me anything. And then this situation happened. You want to tell me after the house caught on fire. But I've kind of flipped it now in a positive way where it's like, if so, I know with certain people, if they do come to me, you're coming because you know I'm going to tell you the truth. And I feel like some of it is like love, like I'd rather tell you like exactly what you want to hear, but I've learned that you have to be open to people not liking what you said. So it's
Hmm.
like like what Kenneth mentioned earlier, like if I'm taking space, I guess, like if you're coming to me and you want an answer, I also have to be open to somebody not liking what I said because it's like we're human. So I think it's like a mix. Some people might say they want something, but then when you actually like hear it, like it's completely different. Or oh, I'm hungry, but then when I warm the food up, I only eat a little bit of the plate and I don't want the rest. Like
That's a good analogy. Um, all right, so the counterpoint to that argument is the holding space part of the cultivation, meaning, in that scenario where the hyper masculine individual is, say they want the direct answer but doesn't like the direct answer, is the holding space the nurturing of getting out of that hyper masculine mode and being more vulnerable? Does that, in that scenario, holding space mean I'm holding space for you long term to cultivate, to nurture you beyond that visceral masculine reaction to a place where you can accept the honest truth with love, so on and so forth? It's nuanced, right? I don't know that there's maybe there's an answer, but but to now, right now, it feels very nuanced, and so that dimension is there too, right? And then so in the scenario that you're describing, Eric, um, where you say, "Hey, is it okay if I give you an honest response, or give you a direct thought?" Right? Someone asks you a question, "What should we do about such and such and such and such?" You say, "Okay, do you want me to give you the truth?" And they say, "Yes, of course I want the truth." And you give them the truth, and then they, have an adverse reaction. Maybe the holding space is the cultivation that takes place after that, right? It's to say, I gave you this honest truth. I know it upset you. I know it hurt you. I'm going to continue to pour in love, support, nurture, be patient, so on and so forth, because that's the type of relationship I want us to have, right? I want to be able, even if we disagree, I want us to have that kind of relationship. So, you know what I'm saying, right? Like it's so, I think you and I would probably have the same reaction because I'm that way. I'm very direct, right? The reaction was like, you asked for the truth, I gave you the truth, and now you crying, right? Versus like, okay, actually, if I'm can put myself in your shoes for a minute, I can see how maybe you thought you wanted the truth, but now that you hear the truth, you realize that's not actually what you wanted. What you wanted was encouragement and support and love and so on and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear you. I like at some point there's got to be accountability and then boundaries for
Hmm.
holding space.
Yeah.
Where like, hey, we can
Sweet,
talk about
sweet.
sports, but we can't talk about marriage and relationships or divorce or being a father. So, holding space for like last week I ran into it on Tuesday and it was like, and then same buddy of mine, but I'm in like a disciple kind of role. I'm like trying to disciple him. So I'm able to I opened it and I've never even said this to anybody before. I was like, hey, if we're gonna continue to grow together, and then I held space for like the BS he just tried to like maneuver with. And then this week it was like I was like, hey man, I said I'm proud of you, like great job. And you changed the subject. And because I'm holding space for him and I'm trying to like disciple him, I'm kind of helping him uncover some of his defense mechanisms. And I never had an ear for defense mechanisms before.
Mm.
And like because I'm doing my work and I'm like growing in like the gentleness of like feeling people's moods, kind of like It's feeling like you know how if you take your hands off the wheel and it'll start to just gently go whatever way, left or
Veer.
right,
Yeah.
it will veer. Yeah. So like when a mood veers just slightly, it's almost like hold up, man. Like it's a great job. And you only say you didn't even try to like recognize it or accept it. So let's like hold space for you and let you know like that's phenomenal. And your work like he didn't even want to take the praise. So so yeah, it depends kind of role, but then also like, if we're gonna grow together, or maybe it's just someone you don't have that kind of relationship with, and you let them know, like, nah, we can talk about sports all day, but like keep your mouth shut about my kids, like you ain't got nothing yet. So kind of depends what kind of relationships you trying to have.
Yeah, I mean, I think there has to be some baseline, fellowship, baseline, trust or whatever term we might use to describe a level of a mature relationship, right? That's casual. I don't know, you can hold space for a drink, a sports buddy, right? Someone that you just watch the game with, I agree with that. But I think, we're generally talking about people that we would consider to be friends, in the true sense of the word. And how do we show up in those different scenarios? Um, I just want to read these comments. Maybe we shouldn't hold space without being asked to. The assumption at times is our thinking it's holding space one needs versus simple acceptance of what they already know is their truth. Okay. So Troy, if you can give some color, so definitely we need to ask, right? Are we in that type of situation? What do you need? I certainly think that we need to check in with folks on the their expectations and all of that. But the last part, it's holding space one needs versus simple acceptance of what they already know is their truth. Can you expand on that?
Well, it was more about, I think what it was mentioned earlier, that people don't really want the hardcore response, to hold them accountable for what they already know, um, is needed versus holding space and listening and listening and listening. Because really, we do find sometimes people don't want the truth.
Yeah.
They merely just want you to just kind of almost give them a green light to continue being and doing whatever
Yes.
that is that they're
Yes.
doing. They're kind of
Yes.
looking for a validation
Yes.
versus true space that can be transparent, and you give them real feedback that they really need. They really just want you to say, "Oh yeah, you're good."
Yes, very, very true. Very true. Um, and so yeah, again, this is a nuance. We probably need a couple of different terms to describe all of these different states of a relationship and these different expectations. But in that scenario, I wonder, and you know this right better than anyone as a pastor, or you deal with this, I should say, in a very real way as a pastor, the idea that just because that's their expectation, do we let them stay in that expectation, or do we challenge them to grow and say, well, this is what our relationship should be, right? I'm operating, right? You maybe not use this language necessarily, but I'm operating in the way that our relationship should be, which is us being frank and direct and really looking out for each other's best interest. And in this case, for what you're describing, your best interest is XYZ. And because I care about you and want to see you on the right path, want to see you happy, whole, fulfilled, et cetera, right? Like, is that an opportunity to bring the relationship up to the level, even though that person is really just looking for something superficial? And I suppose that's a case by case decision.
Yeah, I do think, in cases that you just described, it's safe many times to give people the options, um, and then have them decide based on the potential outcome. I mean, it's always good for me. I'm always presenting. Uh, an example would be premarital counseling. I'm never going to tell you not to do it. What I am going to tell you is that maybe these are some red flags and you have some decisions that maybe you need to step back and make. But you already knew that coming in because you're the one that brought it to me. So you just kind of you just kind of needed me to hear it,
Yeah.
and then either say yes or no, which is that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you these options that say, know this, if you move forward in this direction, here's some things that could happen. And if you choose to, well, so there are many ways to kind of digest that versus just allowing people to feel like they can come and dump and leave carrying that same baggage with them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does make sense, and thank you for providing the color context, Rob. And then I want to get to Kenneth's comment.
Yeah, I agree with Pastor Troy said, because I wanted to, as a coach perspective, I think I wanted to share that sometimes I had to remember, when it comes to holding space, sometimes you don't know the space that the person is in, right? So sometimes people could come in and be very impulsive with what they're spilling. So I think the reason why I choose the strategy of surrendering myself is because sometimes when we're impulsive, we don't speak clearly. So I need to not assume that you should have all the answers that I want you to say. So there's a difference from judging the situation versus being judgmental and telling you, oh, you supposed to, or you need to, you should have been, or anything. I think that surrendering to reading the room and understanding where that person is so that you could share your experience, not tell them what to do or what they need to fix, but share an experience that could possibly connect the dots to them versus, just going in and expecting them to just have all the answers. I think that if they had all the answers, what do they need you to hold space for?
Great job.
So that was just something that just came to me.
So
I really
good.
like that one.
So good.
I
So
really like that
good.
one. Sorry, I had to
That was
jump in
good.
there. I like that one.
That was
Because there's
so
been times I've been on
so good.
on conversations like that too, and I'll be like, well, like, how did you feel? And they say, I don't know. And then I'm like, all right, you really kind of stuck, and that's cool. But then I would almost ask them uh, how, like the other side of the question, like, how didn't you feel? Did you hate it? Did you love it? Did you kind of take some stuff off the table for them? I don't know if that makes any sense,
It
but
does.
cool.
Yeah. That was good. Oh my goodness, that was so good. No, I'm gonna watch this video many times. I'm trying to get one of those YouTube plaques off of this video, just off of me watching it over and over again. Yeah, I'm gonna have that plaque on the wall behind me. Next week, like, where I get that plaque from? Rob dropping gems in the video. No, that was good. Thank you, brother. Thank you, Troy. Thank you, James. Thank you, Eric. I mean, everybody for contributing. Kenneth, I said you was throwing something in the chat. Let me see. Holding space allows me the ability to support them to a different support, but being there when they need it. Amen. Amen. Redirecting them to something else that they actually need, whether that be a clinical service or something else. Yes, absolutely. Very good point, Kenneth. We do not always have to be the final space that is held, right? Sometimes we can be a facilitator, a guide, a Sherpa, whatever you want to call it, to get them to something that they absolutely need. Great point. Great point. Great point. And that's another thing, as men, I'll speak for myself. As I always want to have the solution, want to say the right thing. Sometimes it's okay to say, I don't know. Let's figure it out together. Let's talk about it. Let's call some people. Let's whatever we got to do to get them to the right place. Amen. That was good. Good, Kenneth. Thank you.